Forget the golden capes of Hollywood. Forget the slow-motion gymnastics and the polished bronze. To understand what actually happened at the Hot Gates in 480 BC, you have to smell it first. Imagine the suffocating, metallic stench of copper from spilled blood mixing with a salty mist of the Aegean Sea. Imagine the sound of 10,000 men screaming in 50 different languages, suddenly silenced by the rhythmic, terrifying thud of 300 wooden shields hitting the earth in perfect unison. This is not a legend. This is a visceral, bone-crushing reality of human meat against Persian steel. The Persian Empire was not just an army, it was a tidal wave. King Xerxes, the king of kings, didn't just bring soldiers, he brought an entire civilization. Estimates from antiquity claim 2 million men, a force so massive that when they stopped to drink from rivers, the rivers ran dry. Behind them lay the conquered world. Before them lay a tiny, fractured collection of Greek city-states that spent more time fighting each other than preparing for invasion. And in the middle of it all stood a narrow pass, a bottleneck between the mountains and the sea, called Thermopylae. The man standing at the mouth of that pass was Leonidas. He was 60 years old, an age when most men in the ancient world were either dead or forgotten. But Leonidas was a Spartan king, man-forged in the Agorge, the most brutal military training program in human history. As a boy, he had been starved, beaten, and forced to kill to survive. He didn't just lead men. He was the physical embodiment of a culture that viewed retreat as the ultimate sin. When the Persian scouts rode up to the Greek lines, they didn't find soldiers trembling in prayer. They found the Spartans stripped naked, oiling their muscles, and calmly braiding each other's long hair. To the Persians, it looked like madness or vanity. To the Spartans, it was the ritual of the condemned. They were dressing for their own funeral. Xerxes sat on a golden throne carved into the side of a mountain, looking down at the tiny speck of resistance. He waited 4 days, certain that the sheer sight of his gargantuan host would cause the Greeks to melt away. On the 5th day, his patience evaporated. He sent a message to Leonidas. "Hand over your arms." The response that came back was only 2 words carved into history forever. Molon Labe. Come and take them. The first wave of Persians moved in. These were the Medes, proud warriors of the empire, but they were equipped for the open plains of Asia, not the claustrophobic nightmare of the Hot Gates. As they charged, they hit a wall. Not a wall of stone, but the Dori, the long Spartan spear. The phalanx was a machine. Every man's shield protected the side of the man to his left. They moved as one organism. Step, thrust, twist, recover. The Persians found their shorter spears useless. They couldn't reach the Spartans. They were simply being systematically harvested. Watched in horror as his first wave was turned into a pile of corpses that began to block the very entrance to the pass. Anger replaced confusion. Xerxes sent in his personal guard, the Immortals, 10,000 elite warriors, masked and silent, who were said to never lose a man, because as soon as one fell, another took his place. They marched over the bodies of their comrades, their silver-butted spears glinting in the sun. But the Spartans played a terrifying psychological game. They feigned a panicked retreat, turning their backs and running. The Immortals broke formation, screaming in triumph, as they rushed forward to slaughter the fleeing Greeks. Suddenly, On a single whistle command, the 300 Spartans spun on their heels. The wall of bronze reappeared in a heartbeat. The immortals, caught in their own momentum, ran directly onto the points of the Spartan spears. The carnage was so absolute that Xerxes is said to have jumped up from his throne 3 times in pure physical terror. By the second day, the ground was no longer dirt. It was a slurry of mud, salt, and human remains. The Spartans were exhausted. Their bronze armor was dented. Their spears were... Their muscles were screaming, but they didn't stop. They fought in shifts, stepping back to breathe, while the next rank stepped forward to kill. Leonidas stood in the front, a lion of a man, covered in the blood of 100 enemies, his voice hoarse from shouting commands over the roar of the sea. But heroism has a ceiling, and it is usually hit by a knife in the back. A local Greek named Ephialtes, driven by the hunger for Persian gold, walked into Xerxes' tent. He told the king of a hidden goat path that led through the Anapaia mountains, a path that would allow the Persians to circle behind the Greek position. Under the cover of darkness, the Persian army began to climb. At dawn on the 3rd day, the trap snapped shut. Leonidas received word that they were surrounded. He knew the end had arrived. He dismissed the majority of the Greek allies, telling them to live and fight another day. But for the 300 Spartans and a few hundred loyal Thespians and Thebans, there was no exit. The Spartan law was simple: stay and die. The Spartans had their last meal. Leonidas looked at his men who had been his friends for decades, and said with a dark, chilling grin, "Eat a hearty breakfast, men, for tonight we dine in Hades." They didn't wait in the narrow pass to be picked off. They marched out into the widest part of the valley, a suicide charge designed to take as many Persians to the grave as possible. This was no longer a tactical battle. It was an explosion of primal violence. When their spears shattered, they drew their xiphos, short, brutal swords. When those snapped, they fought with their bronze shields, using the edges to crush skulls. When their shields were ripped away, they used their daggers, their fists, and even their teeth. Leonidas fell early in the final surge. The Persians rushed forward to take his head as a trophy, but the remaining Spartans formed a circle around their king's body. 4 times they pushed the entire Persian army back just to keep their king's corpse from being defiled. They fought with the strength of men who have already accepted they are dead. Eventually, the Persians, terrified to get within arm's reach of these demons, backed away and used their archers. Thousands of arrows blotted out the sun, raining down on the last handful of Spartans until there was nothing left but a mound of bronze and broken bodies. Xerxes walked the battlefield afterward. He was the victor, but he felt like a loser. He had lost tens of thousands of men, including 2 of his own brothers, to a force he could have stepped on. In a fit of petty, uncharacteristic rage, he ordered Leonidas' head to be cut off and fixed to a stake. He wanted to erase the man. He did the opposite. The 300 Spartans didn't die for a victory. They died for a story. Their sacrifice acted like a lightning bolt through the heart of Greece. It turned a collection of bickering cities into a unified nation. Because of those 72 hours of hell, the Greeks found the courage to win at Salamis and Plataea. They saved the cradle of Western civilization. If you visit Thermopylae today, the sea has receded, and the pass is wide. But there is a stone there, simple and unassuming. It doesn't list the names of the dead or the glory of their deeds. It simply asks the passerby to deliver a message. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. They knew they were going to die before they even left home. They knew the path was a trap. They knew the numbers were impossible. And they stayed anyway. That is the true chill of Thermopylae. Not that they fought, but that they chose the end, and they met it with a smiland, a sharpened blade,